をしてもらうという。
However, in order for people to make a calm and rational assessment and choices about the kinds of risks that they are facing by living in this area, I thought it was important to at least present people with this data. I would also like to bring to your attention other data that might be used to compare the data that I've just given you. For example, if you are a smoker, that would be if you are a heavy smoker, that would be equivalent to your receiving radiation exposure from 1,000 to 2,000 millisieverts. If you are obese, that means that you are your risk goes up to the equivalent of being exposed to 200 to 250 millisieverts. If you hate your vegetables and don't eat a balanced diet, that would increase your cancer risk equivalent to 100 to 200 millisieverts of exposure. In regard to, just to give you some more information for you to consider, if you consider that drinking water, tap water, contains chloroform, if you were to drink 2 liters of this water every day, then your increased cancer risks would only be less than 0.01%. That would be less than the 100 to 200 millisievert exposure I mentioned earlier. With regard to the standards that we've set for allowable exposures to radiation, which is 20 millisieverts per year, doing surveys of people who would be around that area, the actual exposure that they would be receiving would be about 1/4 of this standard. In other words, their exposure would be about 4 to 5 millisieverts per year. In other words, we've taken a very conservative estimate. There are many diverse elements to consider going forward. However, we believe that we have a responsibility to the people of Fukushima, to people who live their everyday lives in Fukushima, to know this information. In other words, therefore, although it is a very low risk, we are presenting the people with this information. We also believe that it is important to keep working, to keep striving to bring down these radiation levels as much as possible. This is especially true when the people in question are children. We believe that no efforts should be spared to try to limit the exposure of children to radioactivity. As a result, in regard to reopening schools, we believe that they should not be reopened until we can bring the radiation levels down to less than 1 microsievert. That every effort should be made to protect children from possible contamination from the foods that they put in their mouths. And we believe that this must be a community-wide effort, not just a personal or individual effort. In other words, the radiation levels of foods must be done on a community level. What I mean by that is that we must distribute enough radiation meters or dosimeters so that everything can be measured. As I mentioned earlier, I believe very strongly that Fukushima should serve as the center for future research and development of technologies regarding medical treatment using low levels of radioactivity. I believe that it is not simply enough to do research. You must set very ambitious or high targets. One of the targets that I am considering putting into place right now is to bring the cancer levels, in other words, the percentage of people who contract cancer during their lifetimes to very low levels. More specifically, what I'm saying is that I would like to make Fukushima Prefecture the prefecture where it is eventually least likely that a person will contract cancer. This is not simply an abstract dream. I have spoken about this with experts, and they have said that it is possible. At present, we do not have enough information to specifically set targets at present. However, I would like to give you some idea of what I have in mind. On the one hand, certainly, if you are exposed to radioactive materials, it is true that even though it might be a small percentage, the increased risk that you will encounter of contracting cancer is something that you cannot avoid. In other words, you will have this increased possibility that you might contract cancer. However, when we look at cancer from a larger picture, we see that there are other risks, even bigger risks, that might cause a person to contract cancer. As I mentioned earlier, there are things that we can do. For example, perhaps we can, in Fukushima Prefecture, discourage people from smoking. perhaps we can provide more balanced meals or encourage people to eat in a healthier, more nutritious way. Or perhaps we can have in Fukushima a policy so that people get much more exercise and more physically active. And as a result of all of these measures, the number of people who are ill, become ill, or develop cancer actually goes down. In other words, I think there is a real possibility that Fukushima could become a prefecture of long-lived, healthy people. I believe that Fukushima could actually take the leadership in this area in Japan, and I believe that the Japanese government could very much support these initiatives. I said earlier that for the facilities itself, the on-site facilities themselves, we have come to a state of closure or resolution. However, we cannot say that things have been resolved until the off-site areas, in other words, the rest of Fukushima, also becomes vital again and full of energy again. That is the only way that we can have true resolution to this accident. And I would like simply to say here that we are moving forward. We have taken a big step forward in this process. Noda has declared that until Fukushima recovers, we cannot have true recovery for the rest of Japan. As the youngest member of the cabinet, I would like to confirm with you here today that I intend to spend the rest of my days following what happens in Fukushima, in other words, to share their fate as well. Thank you for your kind attention.
I think I forgot to introduce Mr. Aizawa to you. He's sitting next to me. He's the Vice President of TEPCO, must be due to the emotion caused by the death of Kim Jong-il. We hope to get at the press club soon the President of TEPCO. And thank you very much, Mr. Aizawa. Christoph. And then the lady. And then
Süddeutsche Zeitung. The difference between you and the Prime Minister, you now said that the equivalent of a cold shutdown, while the Prime Minister spoke of a cold shutdown. Now in nuclear technology, a cold shutdown is a moment when you can open a reactor and take the fuel out. And in Fukushima, you're 10 to 25 years away from that, depending on each block. So my question is it not misleading to call it the equivalent of a cold shutdown, and even much more misleading to call it a cold shutdown? Thank you.
Excuse me, may the interpreter interject? She was told that the term that is used by the Prime Minister, which is Reon Teishi Jotai, should be translated as the equivalent of a cold shutdown. So they're using the same terminology. I was told just before we entered the room that that's the term I should use. I'd like to confirm that both members of the government, also members of TEPCO and members of NISA all use the same terminology, which is translated as the situation or conditions or the equivalent of a cold shutdown. We all use the same terminology. And yes, of course, we understand that there is a difference between the cold shutdown state that you have for a normal nuclear power reactor and the state of cold shutdown that we have achieved at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And we are explaining the difference in concepts. Though the concepts are different, I would like to point out to you that the direction that we are facing, in other words, the target that we are trying to achieve, is the same in both situations. In other words, the goal is to ensure that we can have a situation for the fuel, nuclear fuel, where it is kept in a cooled state. We can continuously keep it cool. And secondly, we want to be able to ensure that radioactive materials are not emitted. That is the whole point of the cooling system that we have in place. So yes, the concepts are different, but the goals are the same. The direction is the same.
And after Jimbo-san, Madame Limisi, when you pose your question, tell which person you want to answer. Thank you.
Yes, my question is directed to Mr. Hosono. My name is Judith Stalpers, Netherlands Press Association. I would like to ask you, you also mentioned in your NHK information you gave on December 16 that there are scenarios you have in mind on which you can react appropriately so that the radioactivity won't get off the site. And that's also what is on the English language paper you just presented. Which scenarios do you have in mind? So which problems could occur and what do you have in mind to counter these scenarios? Because that is what worries the people, whether you call it a cold shutdown or not.
過去の話。
これからの話でございます。これから、
長期のプロブレムね。OK。OK。
これから、
OK。
Step 3, etc. They have to be done. But what is worrying
OK。まあ一番
The problem that we have in mind is the possibility that we will not be able to continue with the cooling system. In other words, the cooling water circulation system might not work.
でそのことは
And in regard to the measures that are being taken to deal with this situation, I think Mr. Aizawa will probably go into more detail after I leave. But I would like to point out to you that it is for this reason, to be able to ensure that we have a stable supply of water circulating to keep this cooling system working, it's what the people have been working at the site for these past few months.
ですからそれ
To ensure that the cooling system works, there basically is no possibility of another major accident occurring.
であともう一つは
Another area that we are very much focusing on is the possibility of contaminated water leaking. Of course, even if contaminated water were to leak, this would not necessarily lead to a major accident. However, we feel that we must ensure that contaminated water leakage is stopped. This is something that must be done.
Terry Jimbo's video news. Hosono-san, this is so unlike you. You are the most sensible minister in the cabinet, along all these, press conferences and everything during the accident. But this time, I don't think you're making sense. You have said you don't know where the nuclear fuel is.
Yes.
You have said melt-through might have occurred. It is likely that the fuel is no longer inside the pressure chamber.
Right.
And you also say you don't know where the fuel is. But you say fuel is cooled down and stable. How can you be sure that something is cooled down safely when you do not know where it is? And what's the rush? Why do you have to say the cold shutdown now? You have to declare it now. No one's going to believe it if you say it now, under this condition. Why do you have to? What's the rush that you have to say it now when you don't know where the fuel is? You have to acknowledge that. And the investigation into the accident is not released yet. You don't know what caused the accident yet. And why hurry?
OK。
With the harshest question from my friend, Mr. Jimbo. In regard to where the nuclear fuel might be, there are three possibilities. One is that the nuclear fuel is still in the pressure vessel. The next possibility is that it might have melted through the pressure vessel and come into the containment vessel. And the third possibility is that it might have worked its way out through the containment vessel and be underneath it. In regard to the temperature at the bottom of the pressure vessel and in regard to the temperature within the containment vessel, as has been shown to you through the documents that have been presented to you, the temperatures in these two areas are all under 100 degrees.
そして
In regard to that third possibility, that some fuel might have worked its way out through the containment vessel and gone underneath it, I think there's a very strong policy, or we think there's a strong possibility that some fuel is actually in that location as well. But when you consider the fact that because of gravity, things always fall from the top to the bottom, you understand also that water is also being injected into this system, and water also falls from top to bottom. In other words, if there is nuclear fuel at the bottom of this scenario, it is also being cooled by the water that is falling on top of it. The water that is falling on top of it is then taken out of the system, and it's actually the water that is eventually going to be decontaminated and used as part of the circulating water cooling system. In regard to the state of this cooling water that is in the circulating system, its situation is stable. To the condition of this water, there are different measures that we have taken to try to gauge its state. For example, is there any steam that is being emitted? Are there fluctuations in the temperature of the water that is extracted? Using all of this surrounding information, we have seen over the past few months that there have been no such changes in temperature or steam being emitted. And therefore, it is our conclusion that it is in a stable state.